Hey everybody, welcome back to Yarn Over Here with Joe. And today what we're going to be talking about is how to create a center pole ball of yarn. I find that balling yarn is not talked about enough. It's really important that you be able to do this. One, so you don't end up with like those weird little half-finished skeins, and they end up sitting at the very bottom of your stash, and they end up getting tangled, and it's no fun for anybody. Um, this is what my balled yarn looks like. This is all done by hand. You can also get a machine that does this, but knowing how to do it by hand I find is very useful, especially if you don't have a whole lot to ball. You're going to notice a few things about mine. First and foremost is it is a center pull ball. See how the yarn comes out of the center? That means that I pull on this end, and that's where the yarn comes out. Also, you're going to notice mine are flat on the bottom. Okay, the reason that I do this is so that I can set it flat on a table, it doesn't roll anywhere, and then I'm just pulling on this end. Why should you ball your yarn? Well, there's a couple reasons why. First, if you have a lot of smaller ends and scrap yarn, not enough really to like throw away or work into, an actual small scrap project, you need to have a way to store it. Ball your yarn up. It saves it from getting tangled, makes it easy to find, easy to identify, and go with a flat one like this. It sits better in the bottom. There's no rolling around. So the next thing I want to talk about really quickly is how people often receive their yarn. In a lot of higher end stores, you're going to get what's called a hank, and that's what a hank looks like. This you're going to have to put on a yarn swift, or have a partner who is really, really patient and hold their hands out like this, because this yarn is literally just done in one big circle, and then it's tied off and twisted, and the ends are twisted together so it doesn't come apart. This is very useful if you'd like to see color changes and it looks really pretty. However, if you try to cut the knots off and knit with it, it's going to tangle and going to create a big old mess, because you figure, that's 500 to 600 yards, which is a big, 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 big knot. So you're going to have to ball that. The next most common way you're going to see it is like this. This is a skein, that's what it looks like. Now a number that you can get will also be center pull, but you kind of got to dig in for that other end, and you're pulling out too much and things get tangled or you can't find it, your yarn gets tight, and it's just not a good situation. So what I really recommend is that you go ahead, just take it apart, ball it up if it's not too big, and that's really going to help you a lot in the long run. Also, once you take off of this packaging, this will poof out, and it won't be this shape. So don't think just because you get it in the shape that this was the shape that it's going to retain for a number of yarns. Just know that one in advance. But a lot of times after you've done some projects, look, it's that horrible green yarn again. This is what it comes out looking like with things wrapped up. And if I were to try to knit with this, as you can guess, it's probably going to roll all over the floor, which is not good. So I'm going to go ahead and ball up part of this so you can get a chance to see what this looks like. First, I'm just going to take some off of here so that it doesn't roll everywhere. Alright, so there's the end of my yarn, and what I'm going to do, yet again, bring in pinky, hold my two fingers out just like I'm going to pinch something, and then I'm just going to make a figure 8. So wrap around my thumb, and then whichever way I wrap, whether it's this way, which I don't like doing, I like pulling it under my thumb and then over. I'm going to do the opposite on my finger. So over the thumb, behind the finger, over the finger, and then I'm going to go behind my thumb. And it's just going to create a figure 8. See, that's what it looks like. And then I'm just going to keep doing this over and over again until I've built some of this up. And this is what's called a butterfly. So if you're going to do things like some forms of color work, where you need what are called bobbins, which are shorter pieces of yarn, just helps them avoid getting tangled. You would put it like this, pinch it, and then wrap around the center, and then that's going to be a butterfly. We're not going to do that. We're going to get it out to about there. Just keep wrapping until you've basically covered your thumb. You are going to pinch in the middle and pull your fingers out. Don't let go yet. Take the two little ends right here and fold them. You're going to fold it in half so that the two ends touch. You want to have the short end of your yarn dangling over to one side. Don't wrap that part up. And then your longer end, okay, in knitting, the longer end that's attached to your ball is called the working yarn, just so that you know. We're going to take this and then we're just going to wrap it around the center. Just wrap for a little while. Okay? Until you've basically, and don't worry if it goes over your fingers, essentially you don't want to wrap this too tightly because if the yarn is wrapped tightly, especially for natural fibers, it's going to stretch. All the natural fibers have a certain amount of elasticity and stretch to them, and you don't really want to stress out your yarn, especially if you paid, you know, $40 for that skein. Whew, I'm going to treat it like it's a baby. Anyway, once you've got this wrapped up, you know, enough that it basically covers from end to end, you're going to stop. And then I just turn it so that my working yarn is towards the top. And then we're going to wrap, but we're going to wrap at an angle, right? So if this is my horizontal angle, I'm going to wrap it about a 45-degree angle from that. An easy way to do this is to put your fingers in the middle of that, you know, if this is circular, put your fingers right in the middle of that circle and then wrap so that it touches the end of your fingers. And just start wrapping that way. We're probably going to wrap for a dozen to 15 times. So not a whole lot. And then just stop. And then you're going to turn it again about a little bit less than a quarter turn. You might have to hold your working yarn down for a second and then just continue to wrap just like you did before at approximately a 45-degree angle. Right now, what you're going to notice is, one, we're wrapping up in a very neat and orderly fashion, but two, it's also going to create, this is going to create a little bit of height. Okay, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but once you figure out how tall you want this to be, so if you have shallower storage areas, you can slide this in pretty easy. You know, that's not very tall. It's what, 2.5, maybe 3 inches tall. So you can slide balls like this in some very creative places if you wanted to. Again, and you just kind of keep, by the way, balling like you did before. Hold in the middle, wrap around for, you know, a dozen to 15 times. And what you're going to notice, if you look at the top of this, is it's going to create kind of a spirally effect. And good, that's what you want. You want it to look like that. Because when you take it apart, when you pull from the center, it's pulling that yarn out in the opposite direction, okay? So when it's laying out, it's nice, it's neat and orderly, it's very easy to pull. It's a little bit tight at first because you're going to have a lot of extra yarn on there, but don't worry about that. So as you go along, once you get this to the whatever height that you like or that you want, depending on how big this is, I've had some of these that I've balled up, you know, they've been that big around, they look like a dinner plate, but it was lace weight yarn, so it really wasn't that heavy. It took me a long time. All right, so we're just going to do one more of these, and then once you get to the height that you want, you're going to keep doing this, but you're going to change the angle just slightly. Okay, so right there I'm going to say that's how tall I want it to be. Yeah, 2.5 inches. Okay, I use a lot of biometric measurements, and you figure for that first joint it's approximately 1 inch, so that's how I guesstimate. So on this next one, instead of making sure that it wraps the top across the top, I'm going to have it go at a slightly steeper angle to go across the side. Okay, and at first you're going to be like, well, I'm basically doing the same thing, Joe. What's the deal? So it doesn't make a lot of sense right now. Turn. But after you've done this for a few times, one, you're going to notice that your spiral pattern is a little bit wider, especially on the sides. You're going to be creating like a diamond pattern. First of all, that looks really pretty. It looks pretty professional. But two, if you are wrapping carefully, which I'm trying to do and talk to you at the same time, you are also going to notice that the bottom and top of this are going to be flat, or relatively flat. So see how that's becoming flat-ish? You can kind of squish it a little if you need to. And then you would just keep this up to finish off your ball of yarn. You And then once I get to the very end, then I just wrap around the center a few times, and then I can tuck my extra yarn in so that I don't have a dangly bit. This balling this way, I kind of discovered by accident, and I find that it is a much better, more practical way to ball your yarn, to store your yarn, and especially if you travel with it. If you're doing color work where you're going to have a number of balls of yarn, this works out really well because you can get a shoebox or other small container and you can kind of wedge these in, and they're not going to move around like you would with other things, and you don't have to cut open a plastic soda bottle and thread your yarn through that. Nor do you need a teapot. That's another one you're going to see on Pinterest. While I love teapots, trying to get them up through that little nozzle is just very annoying. Anyway, that is how you ball yarn. I strongly recommend that everyone basically learn how to do this. And it is incredibly useful to you. All right, you guys have a great day.